On with the conference, and we are getting ready for the next session. It's a session that I am chairing. So in the next session, we are looking forward to have presentations on risk management in higher education during and post the pandemic. From Thomas, we are also going to listen from a presentation on digital divide among higher education students in Namibia and impact on teaching, learning, and assessment during the pandemic. It's a case study, and we'll also have chance to listen from the presentation on effectiveness of remote learning. It's the evidence from Zimbabwe. So we will have these three presentations, and thereafter we are going to have a discussion on these particular presentations. So in this moment in time, I would like to invite Thomas to come through and share the screen and be ready to present. You have got 20 minutes to do that, and everybody who has got a question around his presentation, please keep it towards the end, or you can just type it through the chat room. So Thomas, the floor is yours. Please share your screen so that we will be able to follow your presentation. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I've been trying to log in and have been experiencing some challenges with my network this side. I don't know if it will be fine if I can do the presentation without sharing the screen, because I'm now using only a small phone. My laptop is misbehaving, but I can be able to share my paper even via email if possible.
Can you share the presentation via email with me?
All right, thank you. All right, I'm sending it through shortly.
Oh, okay. And all the presenters, if you have challenges with sharing, please share with me your presentation so that I have them by my side. Then I will be able to share them on your behalf. So if you have challenges of that nature, please do send through your presentations to me. Then I will be able to share from this side. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, can you confirm if you have received my email?
Let me just check. Nothing yet in the conference email address.
Okay, that I have emailed. Let me resend also.
Did you manage perhaps, or I allow you to sort your things and I move to the next one and come back to you?
Is he on mute?
You're muted.
All right, I'm saying maybe you can move to the next one whilst I'm waiting for you to receive what I've sent to you. I've also resent just now.
Oh, okay. So let me allow me to go to who is this now in the next one, to Semende. If your presentation is ready, please come through and present.
Good morning. Yes, I've actually sent it to you for sharing. I don't think you're allowing us to share.
Participants are allowed to share. Previous participants were able to share.
Share, isn't it? Okay,
Yeah.
because I can't see the sharing button here on my device. I think it's because of the nature of the device, I can't see it. So would you kindly share for me while I go through with my own presentations here? You can share that side.
Oh, but I haven't received it yet.
I sent it already, I think an hour ago.
An hour ago, there is nothing in this mailbox.
Directly to your email, not to the conference, but to Dr. Alicia Woyo's email.
Did you perhaps use the correct one? Because I don't have anything in my personal as well.
Okay.
Can you maybe check the junk or something? It's strange if emails are not coming in.
Is it okay? Let me just put it here, and then I will check the junk as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let me quickly do that. You know, in
It's
my
not
junkie, there's no presentation here.
Okay. Yeah.
I see it went, I think the problem is it went to the no reply at Zoom email address. Okay. So I should
Oh,
send
okay.
it.
So may you please quickly do that.
Okay, okay. Will you kindly read it for me, your email? Should I use
Elisha Warrior 77
Warrior 77
at gmail.com.
Okay. I've sent it through. I hope it goes through.
Yes, it came through. Just give me one moment. I'm sorting it out.
Thank you. I can see it now.
Okay.
Is it
Let me
possible
just
to
put it
on
in
PowerPoint?
presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, there we go. So you have 20 minutes to go through this. Over to you.
Thank you, and sorry for this delay. As you can see, the topic is digital divide among higher education students in Namibia and impact on teaching, learning, and assessment amidst COVID-19, a case study. Obviously, I will not name the university where the study was done for confidentiality reasons. However, we are three authors, myself, Prof. Lovemore Matipira, I don't know if he's here, and Ms. Gloria Carita. Prof. Matipira is the Associate Dean for Research and Innovation, whereas Gloria Carita is the Deputy HOD, Marketing and Logistics, and myself, Associate Dean Teaching and Learning at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Next. Would you please move to the next slide? So this is basically the content page. I will not go through it as we discussed the details inside. Next. Looking at the introduction, we talk about the emergence of COVID-19 as a global pandemic, which redefined the higher education landscape worldwide. And therefore, higher education institutions had no choice but to fully embrace technology to facilitate teaching, learning, and assessment. And as a result, many universities actually moved to remote teaching, learning, and assessment strategies and other sorts of online and blended mode approaches. So according to the World Bank Report 2020, the digital divide among student population has been cited among the key challenges faced by higher education institutions across the globe. And therefore, the digital divide is a phenomenon linked not only to lack of access to the internet and devices, but is also a digital literacy and usage issue, as was discussed by the previous presenters. Next. So in terms of the problem statement, we are saying that with COVID-19 and the recommended prevention and mitigation measures such as social distancing measures and so on led to universities closure worldwide. And therefore, in an attempt to salvage the academic year, universities resorted to what I've already mentioned, the RTLA and online teaching methodologies. Although this may have contributed to continued learning for some students, it seems to have further propagated the ongoing discourse about digital divide among students, but not only in Namibia, globally, basically. Next. So therefore, the objectives of this study is twofold. Number one, to profile the digital literacy, usage, and access among students of the selected higher education institution in Namibia. And secondly, to assess the impact of the current digital divide among students of the selected higher education institution in Namibia on teaching, learning, and assessment amidst COVID. So these are the two objectives that we will discuss in the study. Next, basically from the research objectives, we derive the research questions which this study answers. What is the digital literacy, usage, and access distribution among students of the selected higher education institution in Namibia? And what is the impact of the current digital divide among students of the selected higher education institution on teaching, learning, and assessment amidst COVID-19? Next. Okay, so I will be brief with the literature review, perhaps just to give you an insight of the key concepts. One being the COVID-19 pandemic that we all know is part of the worldwide pandemic of coronavirus disease caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2. So that's basically in terms of medical practice, we know that. The UNDP organization describes coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, as a defining global health crisis of our time and the greatest challenge we have faced since World War II. Stressing that the pandemic is much more than a health crisis. It's also an unprecedented socioeconomic crisis. Coming to the definition of digital divide, initially, it was the digital divide referred to gaps in access to a computer or a device. However, when the internet diffused rapidly in the society, it became a primary type of computing. The term shifted to encompass gaps in not only computer, but also internet access. So we're talking about access to devices and access to internet, but further, today it's also referred not only to lack of access to internet and devices, but also to digital literacy and the usage. So the study, when we're talking about the digital divide, we're talking about access to devices, internet, digital literacy and usage. So those 4 areas we are basically exploring in this study. Next. Okay, so I think that's a repetition, so we can just continue. Next. In terms of technology integration tools for teaching and learning, which we can actually incorporate as educators, we have classroom tools. I'm sorry, this is not so visible, I think, from your end, but I can just read a few of them. Classroom tools that can be used, such as computers and so on, PowerPoint slides, etc., the internet, computer-mediated communications, and learning management systems such as Moodle platforms. And nowadays we have so many other platforms. The previous speaker spoke about Google Drive or Google Classroom, sorry. We also have synchronous technologies, which basically allow us to be live teaching with students, such as WebEx. Nowadays we have Microsoft Teams as well, and etc. And web tool technology such as blog, social media, wikis, etc. Collaboration networks, multimedia, and digital simulation. So those are the tools that can be incorporated to teaching and learning, so as to ensure that we are on track. Sorry for that. Continue. In terms of digital literacy, according to Cement and White 2020, it's the ability to discern technology, information, and safety issues related to ICT, the ability to use a PC, a tablet, mobile phone, the ability to access information, the ability to process and respond to large volumes, etc., the ability to use search engines, to compose, edit emails, ability to download materials from the internet, to use chat rooms, social media, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, etc., and the ability to keep a record of favorite websites, among others. So these were key areas identified by these authors. In terms of research methodology, the study population comprises of students of the selected higher education institution in Namibia. 20 participants were conveniently selected from the student population of the selected higher education institution, which really represents most of the faculty or all faculties at the institution. The data collected from the participant was analyzed using SPSS version 25. Chrombus alpha and principal component analysis were used. to measure reliability and validity, and correlation coefficients and ANOVA tests were also conducted. Okay, next. So the results, I've actually, for the purpose of this presentation, have selected specific results which address the key areas objectives, but the research article itself comprises of more results. So I think the results that we have here are the ones that would speak to the areas objectives. So in terms of demographics, we can see the proportion of participants in terms of gender. Females are represented 54%, whereas males were 46%. It's basically because of the distribution of gender at a given institution. In most of the cases, there are more females. Next. The descriptive statistics, the participants evaluated 15 digital literacy, usage, and access statements using a 5-point Likert scale with strongly disagree, 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree. PCA through fact analysis was performed to assess the underlying structures of the components, and then acceptable combo alphas were actually found exceeding 0.70, which actually indicates the reliability and validity of the study. Next. Okay, now we have a problem with this. Yes, I think I can see it now. In terms of digital literacy usage and access among students, actually the 15 statements are here, and the findings suggest that on top of the list, statement number 13, my digital literacy negatively affects my academic performance, and the factor loading, or Cronbach's alpha of 0.85, so that's a factor loading after the factor analysis, which is on top of the list. Statement 8, I'm comfortable with social media, such as Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, etc. at 0.80, which really, it's something that we observe. Students are very much outgoing with social media, and there's no problem there. Statement 14 was in 3rd place. Access to devices and the internet affects my academic performance, 0.79, but in between you'll have other variables such as ability to access information. I can compose and send emails. I have the ability to respond to large volume. But when we go down to statement 13, to number 13, which is statement 6, I have the ability to create simple web page. So gave 0.49, which is basically 0.5. I have knowledge. I know how to research favorite websites, 0.49, which is basically 0.5. And my lecturer's digital skills negatively affect my learning, 0.49 or 0.50. So it simply suggests that although these variables towards the end are important, they really don't impact the most, or the students are not mostly concerned with such. But on top of the list, we have the 3 statements, which is digital literacy negatively affecting students' performance. They are able to use our website, that's a positive. But the 3rd one, access to devices and internet was a major challenge. Next. So the discussion is basically what I've already elaborated. So we have on top of the list, student performance is affected basically on top of the list, digital literacy affects students' performance at a chosen institution. However, the results also suggest that students at the chosen institution have acceptable digital literacy skills and display appropriate use of digital technology. So they actually have the skills. And that's possibly because the chosen institution has provided ICT courses, computer user courses, as the basic core institutional courses, and everybody is expected to do it. The second point, access to devices and internet is said to be a significant contributor towards students' academic performance. And therefore, this supports the notion that if higher education institutions are to effectively achieve their mandate, they need to break the digital divide among their students. And finally, lecturers' digital literacy seems to be an important factor. However, judging by the factor loading, okay, in this case, judging by the factor loading, it's at the bottom of the list. Hence, this suggests that lecturers' digital skills, although important, is not the main concern among the student population. So possibly because they realize that lecturers have some digital literacy skills, although they differ from one lecturer to another. Next. Conclusions. So the study concluded that digital literacy, internet availability, and devices accessibility contribute significantly to the digital divide among students at the selected higher education provider. Hence, students' academic performance may have been negatively affected during the COVID-19 pandemic due to the digital divide. The study also concluded that there is a significant relationship between the current digital divide at the chosen higher education institution and the students' performance. This is a phenomenon which may be observed across the country and beyond. Obviously, future studies in these areas will really reveal what's happening worldwide, but that's the trend which we believe, the study believes that it's happening across. Finally, there were other recommendations, but to outline the basic ones, the key recommendations, 3 are saved here. Institutions of higher learning should form partnerships to address the need to invest in technology to support students' academic performance. So such partnership can be with the government, private institutions, and even donors worldwide. Students' orientation on ICT issues should be prioritized and monitored continually. The said institution is known to have done that. However, monitoring needs to take place to see whether the students are getting what they should in terms of ICT skills or digital literacy. This study only focused on students' perception of digital literacy because it was a self-reporting study. Digital literacy, usage, and access. Future studies would focus on lecturers' perception of such issues. And obviously, future studies could also look into qualitative research to actually get the in-depth information or the views from the respondents or the participants. And that's what basically what this study seems or wants to do next, or the researchers want to do next, to now engage selected students for a focus group discussion on issues pertaining to that. All right, thank you. I think if you go next. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Evgenia, Dr. Semende, for the presentation on digital divide among higher education students in Namibia, its impacts on teaching, learning, assessment during the pandemic. It was such a good presentation talking about digital divide. The challenge has been around for some time, and it's been perpetuated as this presentation is saying. So please keep your questions for her, so that after these next 2 presentations, then we're gonna get into a discussion time. So this time around, I invite Thomas to come through for the presentation. I received your presentation, so I'm going to be sharing it But the presentation that I received, I think it's not a presentation as such. It's in Word documents. I don't know what should I share here, but you are free to come through. Thomas.
Thank you, Dr. Oyo. I want to know if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Greetings to you all, and I would like to thank those who have presented before me. I want to acknowledge those who are organizing the conference. It's such a great conference under the theme of teaching and learning during and after the crisis. I would want to present about risk management in higher education during and post-COVID-19 pandemic. So maybe just for the benefit of those who might be having some interruptions with their network, I'll just quickly share on the abstract of this research. It is about looking at operations in higher education institutions in Africa, which have scaled down, with several of them maybe getting into forced closure since lockdowns pronounced by various governments end of March 2020. So the future of higher education in Africa is now under severe threat. And as a result of this pandemic and other catastrophic risks, such as maybe earthquakes, terrorism, wars, hurricanes, drought, and cyclones. But despite higher education institutions being the think tanks of research and innovation, the recent COVID-19 has had significant effects which call for massive investment in epidemics, maybe also virology and germ games. So having such investment without equal risk management during and post COVID-19 pandemic may be in vain. So this particular presentation tries to explore the impact of risk management in shaping the imagined future of Africa's higher education. It looks into the impact of risk management in shaping the imagined future of higher education, and also maybe in managing ways of raising higher education from the current pandemic effects. And it also looks at trying to proffer some solutions or possible management ways, some possible solutions to minimize current and future impact. So risk management actually enables institutions and governments to look into other forms of higher education financing. We may be agreeing with me that because of COVID-19, most higher education institutions that have been funded by government have been also facing some challenges as governments were directing the resources that they have towards the root cause, which is actually health financing. So this actually created a gap which actually made some higher education institutions suffocate, as they also maybe possibly failed to receive funding. So I used some mixed research methods following sequential explanatory design, and data was collected from students, lecturers, and higher education ministry representatives and other stakeholders such as sponsors and partners. So the major findings actually in this particular research reveal that risk management triggered preparedness in higher education institutions and students to stimulate survival during the pandemic through blended learning and avoiding complete disruption through forced closures and inadequate educational technology. So I have actually used the basic risk triangle, which focuses on risk identification, risk assessment, and quality control, as well as moderation and examination strategies, which provide a variety of solutions to higher education risks, such as plagiarism and examination cheating, especially when in conducting distance and e-learning. So there are technical programs which actually also require harnessing fourth industrial revolution technologies in e-simulations and programmed robotics to avoid some disruptions in practical learning during forced lockdown. So in the end, higher education institutions must actually continue to provide quality and competent graduates, even during times of catastrophic risks such as COVID-19. And it remains vital for higher education institutions to set up standalone risk management functions within their administrative functions, and also to steer the future of education during and post the pandemic. Now, just as an introduction to this particular presentation, I have this in my presentation paper, that higher education in Africa actually remains one of the greatest hope for the solutions that will transform Africa into a self-sustainable continent in the world. Innovation hubs and great think tanks are expected to emanate from higher education institutions, and various learning methods have been adopted for both theoretical and practical courses in pursuit of sustainable development goal on education. Now, most African economies have set ambitious goals of building self-sustainable economies by 2025 to 2030, with raft changes on higher education learning approaches, and the use of blended learning have become the talk of the continent, and so is the use of higher education institutions to spearhead innovation and development. However, the emergent future have suffered a great setback from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic and other catastrophic risks, such as maybe insurgencies that we see in Mozambique, Sudan, and some other parts of Nigeria, and the African and other various African economies. And we also had some natural disasters such as cyclones, droughts, and floods, which have actually remained the greatest challenges. So we also have another challenge in higher education financing, which have also become one of the major risks that have shifted higher education research in countries like Zimbabwe, which have been actually severely affected by brain drain in the process, despite having recently launched their Education 5.0 model. Now, what is the problem? The problem, this paper particularly tries to explore the impact of COVID-19 as the major challenge threatening the future of higher education in Africa. It tries to look at other catastrophic risks, such as act of God risks or natural disasters, such as wars, as well as other health higher education financing methods. So the state of preparedness of Africa to such catastrophic risks is very low, with most higher education institutions not having even a risk management policy or a framework in place, let alone a risk management function within their administration. So this have actually affected the response rate, which is very much important in such a time. And most higher education institutions have been forced to cut staff salaries, which has demotivated the rolling off of e-learning during the compulsory lockdowns implemented by African government. So the role of the role of higher education in actually proffering a response strategy due to the demotivation of staff is very much essential. So there's also been some forced resignations that we see in research and innovation institutions and higher learning institutions. We also have also to look at some other situations that have happened across Africa. Taking, for example, the case of Madagascar, which have actually claimed that they have a traditional herbal drug for coronavirus, which they call the COVID organics, the CVO, but there have been no higher education institution that has opened their laboratories to try and test the drug. And also, you see also a challenge where we have the World Health Organization President, Rajalina, who warned against the use of such kind of a drug without any medical supervision and cautioned against self-medication. So we have actually a crisis that is available. So we also need to look at having institutions, higher education institutions in Africa that have not actually managed to go public to be studying the effects or to be studying COVID-19 with an intention of coming up with a final solution, like what is happening at Johns Hopkins University in America. And also, we also have some laboratory and field research activities which have been suspended by higher education research centers as a result of COVID-19 crisis. This problem must not be left unattended, ladies and gentlemen, because it actually threatens the future of our esteemed higher education in Africa. So the response to COVID-19 by higher education institutions through adopting e-learning via Zoom, Google Classroom, Google Meet, Moodle, Panopto, and other online learning platforms have faced a major risk. They face actually a major risk of monitoring or supervision, which have resulted in a lot of cheating in online assignments and examinations. And the ultimate problem is the risk of producing and grossly incompetent graduates. Such graduates actually make dangerous employees and also dangerous entrepreneurs. Imagine actually, maybe for example, the number of patients who might die in the hands of such graduate doctors, or properties that will collapse at the hands of such graduate engineers. So such proximate cause will result in the destruction of African nations without the usual means of maybe the common means like atomic bombs or maybe long-range missiles, wars, or natural disasters, but by just lowering the quality of higher education and allowing cheating in examination by students. So the specific objectives of this particular presentation would be to try and explore the impact of risk management in shaping the imagined future of higher education in Africa, and maybe to devise ways, to identify ways of raising higher education from the current pandemic effect, and also to suggest possible solutions to minimize the current and future impact. Part of the literature review looked at various risk management publications or information that has been actually researched by other people to try and maybe possibly find certain gaps that might be in existence. So I will actually quickly go through a snapshot of the literature review, despite there being few information in this particular area at the current moment. So risk management has actually been argued to be an integral part of higher education operations. So this argument is actually weakened by the lack of experts in the area, which have resulted in most educational risk management operations running successfully, worsened by not having a standalone risk management function. We have some universities and colleges that have opted to recruit accountants as closer risk management professionals, despite them not having much specialization in the area. We also would want to look at the interdependence. We were saying there is this author Selmong, he notes that there is an interdependence between risk management and successful higher education operations. One persistent debate on the future of higher education in Africa is whether blending risk management function and administration function or ignoring risk management completely is the right foot forward towards sustainable operations and success. So while it is true that higher education can be successful without risk management in their administrative operations, it could also be argued that there is value addition to operations once risk management is harnessed to this function. The level of preparedness during times of catastrophic risk such as COVID-19 pandemic increases the the level of preparedness during times of catastrophic risk, such as COVID-19 pandemic, increases, which helps manage operations. So at first glance, it may appear that there is no risk in higher education operations, but on closer inspection, however, it is a starting point in paying particular attention to risks and hazards. Operational hazards and employment hazards threaten the success of higher education activities during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have cheating in assignments and examinations, misappropriation of funds, and disruption of practical learning during e-learning times, such as common risk, being actually the common risk in higher education operations, and can be better understood by academics who may be advised by risk management experts on mitigatory measures. So the same risks are also present in normal times other than the crisis time. So we also have research that has been carried out by Mugo, Dera, and Wachira in 2020 on how COVID-19 pandemic is affecting Africa's knowledge production centers, where it was conducted across 501 individuals affiliated with higher education and research institutions across the continent, and it alerted the researchers to a fractured education system exacerbated by global pandemic, where 83% of the respondents reported experiencing disruptions to their ongoing learning. Alarmingly, only 39% said that they were enrolled in higher education institutions offering e-learning options. So it remains to be seen if adopting risk management as a critical function in higher education institutions would help close the gap for continued learning for students during the pandemic. According to Mugo, Odera, and Wachira, there are actually disparities in accessing e-learning in higher education based on gender and age. It remains to be explored if the application of risk management in higher education cannot be affected by similar factors in trying to address the e-learning access disparities gap. Although risk management is actually widely accepted professional practice, academic administrators have called into question the necessity of having a standalone risk management function in higher education operations without duplicating the functions of auditors. So risk managers do not go into deep studies of auditing and what it contains, but they are much into identifying risk, assessing its impact, and controlling the effects of such impact. So according to conventional wisdom, the increased awareness of risk and its inherent characteristic has increased the importance of enterprise-wide risk management in all sectors of the economy, including higher education. Findings concerning risk management in higher education have mixed conclusions. With early research in risk management in higher education operations, which tended to emphasize more on risk to employees' health and equipment. Many recent studies have suggested that risk management must be looking at or from an enterprise-wide approach in higher education. While many of these studies, such as Gray's 2012 and Jenkins 2014, have concluded risk is rampant in finance function, a few have investigated risk from a higher education point of view. In addition, some studies by Raymond and others showed that higher education operations showed that higher education account and finance functions have been overlapping to function also as risk managers in a lot of higher education operations despite limited skills in the area. So there is also research on higher education risk, which have been only touched on surface by some business administration, accounting, auditing, and finance researchers. So along similar lines, some risk management research have been carried out by a number of researchers of late, although most seemed not interested in higher education risk. So the results on risk management research seem to converge on a great need for risk management in higher education operations. So according to Simon 2020, he highlights that the impact of risk management in higher education is convex on risk identification, assessment, and control, resulting in increased industry output and overall contribution to an economy's gross domestic product through production of quality higher education graduates. A case in point can be of the University of Nairobi in Kenya, which made history around April, May 2020 by managing to conduct its first ever end of semester examinations online during COVID-19. where more than 20 students taking Masters of Arts in Environmental Law and Master of Arts in Environmental Policy were able to sit for their examinations right from the comfort of their homes. Serious risk management is a necessity in such times to eliminate cheating in examinations, especially given that students write in the comfort of their homes.
If you wrap up the presentation, if you may wrap up the presentation, 5 minutes to go.
All right, thank you. I'll look at the major results that came from this particular research, which was carried using a mixed approach. The major findings show that risk management triggered preparedness in higher education institutions and students to stimulate survival during pandemic through blended learning and avoiding complete disruption through forced closures, inadequate educational technology, and other factors. So higher education institutions are not well equipped to run necessary tests and spearhead research and innovation on risk management. A very good example is the failure to test the Madagascar COVID organics or a lack of initiatives to further develop the herbal concoction into a pharmaceutical drug that meets the WHO standard. 85% of the respondents agreed that risk management is central around the sustainability of higher education in Africa during and post-COVID-19. These are findings by Mugo, Odera, and Wachira that Africa's higher education system is so fractured that 83% of the respondents reported experiencing disruptions to their ongoing learning during the pandemic with around 61% enrolled in higher education institutions, but that never actually offered online learning prior to the pandemic. It is also of interest to note that there are other alternatives that can be utilized to finance higher education, as most governments suffer and have severe strain during crisis times, such as maybe public-private partnerships and allowing the state institutions like universities the autonomy to run their own operations, looking at some beneficial synergies with industry and private sponsors. So in summary, the higher education risk during crisis may include cheating in assignment, cheating in online examinations, failure of learners to adapt to e-learning mode of lecture delivery, and insufficient infrastructure, ICT infrastructure support for such times. The recommendations that come from this particular research would be targeting maybe some policy recommendations as well as managerial recommendations. Part of the policy recommendations highlight that the higher education institutions should continue to embrace fourth industrial revolution technologies in simulations and programmed robotics for the technical programs during the post-COVID-19 to avoid disruption of practical learning during forced lockdown. Also, government ministries responsible for higher education should establish a risk management policy and framework for higher education academic and non-academic staff operations. Every higher education institution, small or large, should establish a risk management committee which must work hand in glove with staff and students. There must be set out risk management qualities and skills expected for every higher education operation with set minimum standards which must be met prior to certification of the higher education institution to commence its operation. So just like accountants work with accounting software in most of their operations, there must be also a way of embracing risk management software in executing their duties to expedite the process and avoid duplication of effort, particularly maybe when they are maybe coming up with some sort of models. Now we're also looking at maybe managerial recommendations. Universities or colleges that are involved in higher education, business administration, and finance curricula should actually be blended with risk management courses so that there will be fusion of risk management in management science qualifications. Also, higher education management must leverage the moment to seek opportunities for the African knowledge ecosystem to not only survive the current COVID-19 crisis, but also build pathways for longer-term resilience against future shocks to Africa's education system. And management must prioritize risk identification and assessment in higher education operations prior, during, and post pandemics like COVID-19 and other catastrophic risks. For the growth of higher education in Africa, all small higher education institutions must receive compulsory risk management assistance from the government or from management in order to minimize impact of risk and increase quality of graduates. And above all, management of higher education institutions should consider introducing refresher courses on risk management for all administrative staff, academic and non-academic staff, as well as students. So I think in part this is what I have, but major conclusions on this actually look at risk management as an important aspect in higher education, and you have a lot of positives that it brings to the future of higher education in Africa than negatives. So the importance of these findings that in this particular paper include enabling the process of blending risk management and other functions in higher education, and a number of factors such as lack of commitment by academic and non-academic staff, lack of legislation pushing for compulsory risk management in higher education operations, contradictions between institutional policies and legislation, failure to embrace risk management technology in higher education, and understanding some critical areas of higher education operations, such as auditing department and risk management function, needs to be monitored to avoid the negative effects of catastrophic risk, such as COVID-19 on the future of higher education. So these findings lay actually a ground for future higher education institutions and their respective ministries to design and administer legal frameworks for the establishment of essential committees like the risk management committees, among others. And also maybe a study on risk management enables the placement of staff in areas that they are most qualified in as a critical step towards achieving successful higher education operations in Africa. I think for now, those are the major conclusions that I can talk about from this particular presentation. I thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation on risk management in higher education. We'll welcome comments and questions maybe after this. Let me check if the presenter of effectiveness of remote learning evidence from Zimbabwe is is online. I can't seem to see. Is Doreen around? Is Doreen around? I think these people are not in yet. So without wasting time, we would like to direct. I think in the chat room has been quite busy. We need now to bring forth Dr. Semente, Dr. Thomas, so that you take quite a number of questions that have been posted here. So maybe starting with the first presenter. Let me see when it started. Okay. So Dr. Semente, if you are around, there are a couple of questions that we need to have a discussion with you, and you being able to respond to them. The first one is, may you kindly share with us whether you included a question on what is the feasible way to overcome or narrow the current digital divide? If not, then why? The question is, would you be kind to share with us whether you included a question on what is the feasible way to overcome or narrow the current digital divide? If not, then why? May you kindly respond to that. And as you respond to that, you might also need to touch on different types of digital divide, and based on your study, which type of digital divide is common among the students that you included in your sample? And what advice do you give to practitioners, especially university management, to ensure that these types of digital divides are minimized? Let's start with that one.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Warrior. I'm trying to get at the questions from the chat, if you allow me. The first one says, okay, I lost it again. Okay. If I've actually addressed how to overcome the current digital divide. Thank you for that question. It's very interesting because at the end of the day, we want to know what to do. Although that was not the objective of the study. The objective of the study were twofold, which were to basically profile what's happening and to establish the relationship. That was not the objective, but nevertheless, yes, looking at the recommendations made for the study, it actually addresses how to close the gap. I've mentioned that there were more recommendations, but one of them was to foster collaboration with partners, being it the government, the public sector, donors, and also the community, which include the students themselves. So if there's such relationship in which we are able to nurture the understanding and knowledge of ICT and digital literacy, then it's possible to actually close the digital divide. Because on top of the list, the main table where I discussed the results, I've actually categorized the three main issues related to the digital divide. One being foremost was digital literacy among the students, counting 0.80, I think 80 or 85 in terms of the Chromebus alpha or the factor loading. So it's actually high, suggesting that that's the most challenging issue for the students. The second was access to devices and the internet. So basically, and the third one was usage. Students are not being able to actually use effectively the platform. So in a nutshell, addressing the question of the categories, that's how we rank them. Digital literacy 1, access 2, and usage 3. I don't know if I've left. Would you touch on different types of digital divides? I've already mentioned that. And what advice you can give to NAS? I've not mentioned the name of NAS in this platform, in this discussion. My study is a case study of a selected university in Namibia. But yes, assuming it's NAS, I think that's why this question is being asked. So the question is, what advice can you give NAS management to ensure that the effect of these are minimized? Obviously, again, it goes back to the recommendations, which I already mentioned, which is collaboration, training, technology integration in teaching and learning, not just when there is a crisis. Such integration needs to take place already on an ongoing basis. And basically, and when I talk about collaboration with stakeholders, that is to make such devices and data available. And as we know from our end, from NAS, it's happening already. The government actually came in support, and also the public institution, which is the major telecommunication company, also came in on board, and they are availing data and devices to students at a minimum cost. So such collaborations are key to actually ensure that students really get the learning going and so on. Thank you.
And based on your research, the follow-up question says, based on your research, which gender was mostly affected and by which type of digital divide?
Thank you. The study did not explore gender classifications in terms of who was affected. That can be an area for future studies. The study focused holistically students at that particular institution. So without really comparing the data of gender in terms of who is more affected in this case. Thank you.
Okay, but I still think this is quite an important question to be addressed if the contribution of the studies is worried about profiling. It becomes very interesting to know in profiling how these issues around gender usage of ICT, the divide and all those kind of stuff would work out. That could be my comment to that. The second question is the use of some verbs in research signifies that some statistical tools were used. How did you establish digital literacy affect or does not affect or does not influence students' performance? What measure did you use to obtain student performance in a selected institution?
Thank you. That's also a very pertinent question, like the previous ones. Basically, that has to do with the research topical area. The research topical area says impact. And basically, when you're studying an impact, you want to see how it affects. When you're studying influence, you want to see the relationship. So in fact, this study went as far as looking at the impact by devising the different statements which the students were able to rate. And based on those ratings, then we know basically the impact. But further, to answer the influence, the study also made use of a correlation analysis, which was not presented in this study. The correlation analysis is actually to see the relationship between the different variables. For example, access, you can measure access, and for example, performance. What is the relationship between the two? Or performance would also be measured in terms of throughput rate. So you want to see, for example, access and the throughput rate. So that is there. So what I've presented holistically was the key findings in terms of the impact, where you are given the specific load, the theta load, which equates to the specific Cronbach's alpha, and therefore we can actually rate them, which of those factors are significant and which ones are the highest. So in addition, the way the statements were structured already, the highest one on the top is talking about my digital literacy, affect my, my throughut or my performance. Already coming with a 0.80 or 0.85, which is on the top of the list, already answers that. So I thought it wasn't necessary for me to now bring all those correlation analysis, because it really only supports what we have done with the initial analysis, where is to have the factor loading and which equates to the Cronbach's alpha. Thank you.
Thank you. But I still think that the methods of analysis you used did not measure impact. They measure relationship, but there is no causation coming out through in terms of what's really the impact of digital literacy on teaching, what's really the impact of digital literacy on learning, and the use of the PCA there. You simply used it to achieve dimensionality, to reduce dimensionality, and to enhance interpretability of the scales. But more than that, the second objective of this particular study remains not properly answered. The second issue coming here is, may you kindly highlight the impact of digital divide on assessment on learning at your institution based on the findings, which I'm also afraid this particular presentation did not address. Since you only mentioned performance, but in your title you have teaching, learning, and assessment. So my focus now is on assessment. What has been the impact of digital divide on assessment based on your findings?
Okay, I think to contextualize it, when we look at teaching, learning, and assessment from the student's point of view, which is the topic of this study, we are looking at the students, how they get, the teaching and how they learn. And obviously, the objective of such is to have a specific throughput. And that's what the performance we are looking at. obviously, if I was going to actually include the lecturers, I'll then have to talk about the teaching methodologies, how the internet and access is affecting them, or the types of assessment, for example, how it's affecting them. But with students, it's actually it's straightforward, because most of the things that we are looking at in terms of students is performance, throughput, and perception, which the statements they provide for that. And if the student is able to say that my literacy, my digital literacy, really in that my performance, that should answer that particular objective. But yes, for a much comprehensive study, so such clusters can be made, and it's something that can be taken upon to actually enhance the study. And obviously, the comments that you are putting forward, since this is a working paper, which has not yet been published, can actually be incorporated to make such relationships to add value. But from a standpoint of starting and getting the ideas from the students, I think that addresses the topical area. Thank you.
I think people are also free to raise their hands if you have got comments around the two presentations. I'm just going through quite a number of these comments. The next one is, how can you generalize results from a convenience sample?
Yes, in social sciences, we know it's not the first research being done. In social science, that's possible, especially when you have actually done, when you validated your instrument, and there is reliability to that. But to generalize to other institutions may be challenging, but within the given institution, assuming the sample is adequate, it's possible. In social science, yes, in other sciences, natural science and other, it may be challenging, but in social sciences, you are able to generalize using convenient sample. It's not a mismatch to use convenient sample. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Maybe let me switch and come back to you. Let me go and let me check if Thomas has got questions so that it becomes interactive. Thomas, may you kindly give us a highlight on the key risks posed by COVID-19 to higher education institutions in Africa, and briefly tell us what strategies can we as academics adopt to mitigate these risks. May you kindly give us a highlight on key risks posed by COVID-19 to universities and colleges or higher education institutions in Africa, and briefly tell us what strategies can we as academics at higher education institutions adopt to mitigate these risks?
All right, thank you. I think in terms of the key risks that are available currently and also coming from this particular research, we would want to look at the first risk as maybe the health risk and liability risks, where we are saying there are health risks that are posed to the lecturers, the students, as well as also maybe other critical stakeholders that actually maybe work with the universities or come visit the universities. And also there are liability risks that may attach also from also maybe possibly this particular risk, as well as maybe the output that comes from the universities. For example, if we look at maybe a scenario where maybe some institutions maybe in the process of preparing to reopen post-COVID-19, if they start maybe giving maybe face-to-face classes and something just happens and maybe the cases start rising, we will also find health risks maybe to the students as well as the lecturers and maybe other non-academic staff that are at a university. And also in terms of liability risk, I'm looking at maybe scenarios whereby, like I have hinted that because some universities just want to continue, or some higher education institutions just want to continue and wouldn't want their students to miss their expected graduation date, and they start maybe giving maybe online assessments, or maybe they start online examinations. And we are looking at other critical areas such as engineering and maybe medicine, or where people are starting to become doctors. The danger is, the higher risk is the higher education institution might end up maybe producing half-baked graduates who might also be dangerous in the decisions that they will make in the economy, or maybe in various places of employment that they will be attached to. The future would be to see liability risks being traced back to the institutions. Let me give an example. For example, if we have got University A, and there are a lot or a number of cases maybe of their medical graduates maybe coming up with some serious errors, or failing to perform certain procedures that they're expected to perform, that particular university will actually be held liable for producing maybe incompetent graduates, and there will be no excuse of saying maybe these particular graduates have been produced during a crisis period, or maybe during the pandemic. So liability risks are high in that particular area. We are also saying there are also financial risks that come to the university itself, especially due to the effect that comes from higher education funding. You'll find out that in the process where maybe administrative staff are actually continuing to work to ensure that everything runs in the university, lecturers are being paid, and other sundry transactions are actually done. We may also find some financial risks that maybe also may cascade into maybe misappropriation of funds and other financial risks that might come in the process. So as a matter of trying to mitigate against those risks, in times of crisis, universities should actually cease to just expect funding maybe, or to expect grant finance maybe from the government, but they must actually be looking at other alternative funding mechanisms where they can actually maybe come up with maybe some partnerships with some sponsors, or maybe public-private partnerships, and also other funding initiatives where we are saying there must also maybe be some sort of an agreement that comes into effect, where universities, even state universities, might be given the autonomy in making some of their financial, or in using their finances, so that they actually direct the financial resources to where they are needed most. We're also looking at maybe some risks like theft risk. There is need to increase maybe the use of other ICT, or the integration of ICT in monitoring and controlling such kind of risks, maybe using CCTV cameras, and also maybe ensuring that internal auditing or internal controls are intact, and also maybe the finance function actually makes use of accounting information systems that are appropriate, or that address the challenges that are at hand. The other challenge that we have would be cheating. It may be cheating in assignment, it may be cheating in examinations. I know even when classes are being conducted physically, examinations are being conducted physically, there are cases that we know of cheating, where students try to cheat in an examination. Some escape with murder, some are actually may be caught in the process and actually may be punished. But I think this particular risk is exacerbated in online learning, where maybe the assignments are done online or submitted online, and also examinations are conducted online. There should be a mechanism of trying to understand who is actually writing the examination, because there might be a risk where maybe some students may collude with other people to write examinations on their behalf. So in trying to avert such kind of a problem or to mitigate against such kind of a risk would be maybe to come up with mechanisms, especially when it's online examinations, to ensure that maybe higher learning institutions try to make sure that there is some sort of maybe the harnessing of information technology where they see the particular candidate who is writing and maybe try to track if it can be maybe the
All right, Thomas, let me cut short.
Number of gadgets that they use to ensure that maybe at the end of the day they come up with solutions. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, may you please give us summarized responses? We've got quite a number of points that needs to be dealt with. So, Lenders, if you can summarize your responses, it would be quite grateful. I think based on the nature of the way you presented your paper, someone was asking, was this a position paper? Was it a literature review or an empirical study? What instruments did you use, since at some point you indicated that you were doing a mixed methodology? What was the population for that? What was the sample size for each side of the data set? I think those are issues that have been asked here, and if you can quickly respond to that. What was your population? What was your sample size? What was your method of selection? How did you determine those kind of sample size? And I also didn't hear how was data analyzed, like the qualitative data analyzed. If I remember, I don't know whether you said it was an exploratory or an explanatory sequential design, but either way, you didn't quite state clearly other issues of methodology, and it is a concern in quite a number of these charts. So if you can respond to that, please.
All right. I would want to specify that my sample size was of 200 representatives, which comprised of 60 students, 40 lecturers, 20 higher education ministry representatives, 20 health ministry representatives, 20 higher education research representatives, 20 sponsors and partners, and 20 higher education administrative or non-academic staff. These were selected at using. Sorry.
So, and did you ask all those people the same questions? I understand we have got different risks to deal with. Did you use the same instrument for all of those people?
Not necessarily the same instrument. I was actually looking at the risk that actually.
Then it becomes a case. Then the issue of sample size is not straightforward like you are presenting if they didn't use the same instrument.
Yeah, I hear you, but the issue was the instrument was actually one instrument, which was actually a questionnaire, but I would actually allow the participants to leave areas that are not related to actually their particular area of profession or their particular the type of risk that actually that they are exposed to. So it was having some sections where there is sections where it touches on students. There are sections where it touches on lecturers, health ministry representatives. But if the particular participants were willing to maybe give their input on certain areas, even outside their jurisdiction, they were actually allowed to, but not forced to.
Okay, another one question coming from Kudakwashe says, how did you integrate your results? How have you integrated your results to come up with the generalizations?
All right. There was a model that I tried to develop using, and the model is actually in that particular paper that I've given you. But as a result of the issues of time, I didn't dwell much on that particular model, which was trying to look at the relationship between risk management and higher education, actually the future of higher education, where risk management was actually the independent variable, and the future or the sustainability of higher education during and post-COVID-19 was the dependent variable, and was actually looking at other particular factors such as the recovery plan, the funding, as well as e-learning.
I think the last question for you comes from the same person asking, how did you use a single instrument in a mixed method study?
I would want to highlight that because you would find out that, like I've indicated in my presentation, that this particular area is actually more like an area that has been far much neglected. There was actually need, of course, of looking into other instruments beyond actually maybe using just a questionnaire, but also you would actually look at this particular research as maybe a research that is actually an initial research, and some of those things might require a lot of maybe effort, time, and also maybe some sort of funding. But I wouldn't want to dispute the need of actually using other instruments in conducting this particular research.
Yeah, because what makes it mixed methods is the use of you using qualitative methods of data collection and quantitative methods of data collection. So if you really used one of them, then it means there are methodological concerns regarding whether was this really a mixed method study, or it was some kind of quantitative or qualitative study. I think that's the point being made here. So it needs to be clear so that that particular paper is strengthened, and the issues of methodology must be probably addressed, and all those kind of study. Maybe to come up to Dr. Semende as we try to wrap up before lunch. Dr. Semende, an interesting one here. We want to give you some time to respond to this and give you and you give us some information. So someone is asking that if you are given a platform to come up with a strategy to narrow the effect of digital divide on student academic performance during a crisis like this, what will you include in that particular strategy? So we are actually elevating you to a think tank there, and all we want to hear from you is if we can give you, if let's say Namibia or whatever country or government or university gives you this mandate, what will your strategy address in terms of narrowing this digital divide and how it affects academic performance?
Thank you very much for this promotion. I think it's well deserved. All right, let me address the question as been put forward. Yes, as Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning at my institution, what we have done when COVID actually started was to develop an online implementation committee. Online implementation committee that's made up of the associate deans and specific executive directors related to ICT, teaching and learning, and also international services. So the online implementation committee addresses on weekly basis challenges related to COVID and teaching, learning, and assessment. So that was the first step. In that particular committee, we then developed a planning framework for the entire year. Although we did not know what was going to happen, let's say in August, since we were in March, but we actually planned what were the necessary steps. And one of the key steps identified was to provide training to lecturers, training to students, and also training to part-time or adjunct faculty. So the training was conducted immediately online, and also videos were actually created to ensure that everybody gets access. In addition to that, within the planning, we needed to categorize the different groups of students that the university needed to cater for. And in that category, we came up with 3 specific type of students related to our scenario. One was the remote teaching and learning and assessment students, those that really had access to data and devices. The second category was the group of students that had no data and no device. And fortunately, because of our strong data, we were able to really, through WhatsApp and other means, communicate with students to conduct a very quick survey to determine that. So we were able to know which students would come for the remote teaching and learning, which ones would come for the no data, no device. A block release session was actually organized to ensure that those students who didn't have access came for a month or 2 months to catch up after the remote teaching and learning students are finalized. And also the third group was the practical type of students that needed to come and still to obey the social distancing requirements. So specific groups and terms were created so that they would come in the specific numbers at the specific length. And that was a plan which was rolled out already from March and was phased in different throughout the semester. So as we speak, the online implementation committee is now planning for the next year in terms of COVID or post-COVID activities. So we actually are on a planning mode for the 2 scenarios, whichever one works. So by having such type of committees, it becomes forthcoming and it's easy to address challenge. But in addition to that, was to also involve government and private stakeholders in this particular crisis, so that the government would also come and rescue us when necessary. And fortunately, they've actually came up with policies to assist the needy students. Another requirement which has been considered for some time and now been finalized is that every lecturer employed at the university will be given 1 year, 1.5 year training, which is called the postgraduate certificate on higher education. So automatically, if you are employed at this university, you'll be required to take this specific course, which actually teach or actually trains a lecturer on how to handle technology integration in teaching and learning, the Moodle platforms, being student-centered, so that whenever there's a crisis, those issues are addressed before and yeah, so there are many initiatives being put in place, but all requires collaboration. And also from a marketing perspective, since it's the area where I come from, we also encourage to have the use of ambassadors, because it wasn't easy to change people's attitudes. Some people were working using the traditional ways for a long time. So ambassadors from the faculties were selected. In other words, specific people who really are conversant with technology to assist the others. So in that way, we are not saying we have addressed it, but in a way we have minimized the challenges resulting from the digital divide. And we still continue doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone for the session we were presenting on. And we are simply using this platform for people to get various views around their work and try to improve and to make proper contribution. I think from what I've picked since this morning up until now, it's digital literacy is something that we really need to continue to interrogate and probably try to make sure that our research try to come up with concrete implications, especially for practice and all those kind of stuff. So thank you very much for the presentations on digital divide. It didn't start now in COVID-19, it has been around, but perhaps it has been made worse. And it's our responsibility as scholars and practitioners to do research that informs policy, that makes us to develop strategies that will help in dealing with this divide. We really need to narrow it down, and perhaps someone was telling me that he considers digital divide one of the SDGs, so he actually added it and make them 18 instead of 17 is something that needs elimination. And thank you for the perspective on risk management. I think it's something that is worth noting, and it helps us to deal with those kind of issues. So these are cross-cutting issues that we need to continuously interrogate, continuously debate about, continuously read and write about, so that in the end, we can all collectively make African higher education great. We can collectively make ways to escape this pandemic and try to reduce the issues and the fear around, do we really create fake engineers because we are teaching them online? I think it's another area that really needs empiricism and further discussion and that kind of thinking. So thank you very much. It's now 5 minutes to 1. We are going to break for lunch and we'll be back at 2 p.m. To listen to 2 formal presentations of the day. I think we're gonna get some perspectives from Nigeria as well. We're gonna get some presenters from Nigeria, some presenters from Namibia, some presenters from Zimbabwe, and we see how the day ends. So let's go for lunch. Let's be back at least by 5 minutes to 2, so that by 2 o'clock sharp, we're gonna have a medical person chairing. I'm sure he's going to say 1 or 2 words around issues of risk and training nurses online and doctors online if he has that. So let's break for lunch and we'll be back at 5 minutes to 2, so that at 2 o'clock we will be able to start. So it's bye-bye for now. You may continue to be logged in. You just step away and have your food and be able to be back. Thank you very much.